They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy, Commander. Susan Miller stood on the landing pad with 50 other military personnel and government officials. The summer heat made her uniform stick to her back, but she kept her posture perfect. Everyone watched the sky as the massive alien ship approached Earth's first interspecies diplomatic center. "Here they come," Captain Alan Wright said beside her. His voice stayed professional, but Susan noticed his hand tighten on his clipboard. The Calgorian vessel was enormous, at least 3 times larger than the biggest human spacecraft. Its purple-black surface absorbed sunlight in a way that made it look like a hole in the sky. As it descended, wind whipped across the landing area, forcing several officials to grab their hats. Susan had studied everything available about the Calgorians since first contact 18 months ago. They were an old species that had been traveling space for thousands of years. They stood nearly 7 feet tall with gray-green skin and 4 arms. Their technology was centuries beyond human capabilities. That technology was why everyone was here today. The peace treaty signed last month included promises of technological exchange, a gift to welcome humanity to the galactic community. Admiral Gregory Lawrence stepped forward as the ship settled onto the concrete pad. He was the highest-ranking military official present, responsible for this first major exchange. "Remember," he said quietly to Susan and Alan, "whatever they offer, show only gratitude. We can't afford to insult them." The ship's landing ramp extended with a hydraulic hiss. 3 Calgorians appeared and walked down slowly, their movements smooth in Earth's gravity. Ambassador Zexathor led them, his upper arms folded formally, while his lower arms hung relaxed, a posture Susan recognized from briefings as diplomatic. "Openness." "Admiral Lawrence," the ambassador said through his translation device, "we bring greetings and gifts from the Galactic Council." The formal welcomes lasted 15 minutes. Cameras from around the world recorded the historic moment. Susan maintained her position slightly behind the admiral, observing everything. As head of the newly formed Alien Technology Integration Department, she would be directly responsible for whatever the Calgorians provided. Finally, Ambassador Zexthor gestured toward his ship. "And now, as promised, we present technology to assist humanity's development." The ship's cargo bay opened. Susan expected to see sleek devices, perhaps power systems or medical technology. What emerged instead made her blink in confusion. Robotic platforms floated out, carrying what looked like piles of junk, twisted metal, broken components, scraps of materials in strange colors. Some pieces were tiny enough to hold in one hand, others were the size of small cars. All appeared damaged, outdated, or incomplete. Beside her, Alan's breath caught. "What the hell?" he whispered. Admiral Lawrence's face showed nothing, but Susan saw his jaw tighten slightly. Ambassador Zexathor spread all 4 arms proudly. "We present components and materials from 17 different civilizations across the galaxy, technology spanning over 2,000 years of development, all freely given to demonstrate our commitment to human advancement." The robotic platforms settled onto the landing pad, depositing their loads in untidy heaps. Up close, the collection looked even worse. Scorched panels, cracked crystals, tangled wires in strange configurations. "This is their idea of technological exchange?" Alan whispered, barely moving his lips. Susan stepped forward for a closer look, her engineering mind already cataloging what she saw. Something wasn't right. These weren't just random pieces. Some showed signs of advanced manufacturing. Others had power connectors that looked surprisingly functional. "Ambassador," Admiral Lawrence said carefully, "we are grateful for your generosity. Perhaps you could explain the function of these components." Zexthor's upper right hand made a dismissive gesture. "These are materials from various civilizations' development periods, some from decommissioned vessels, others from outdated systems. All contain principles your scientists can study and learn from." Susan knelt beside what appeared to be a cracked energy conduit. Its design was unlike anything humans had developed, but she could recognize its purpose. Next to it lay what might be part of a navigation system, its crystalline structure still intact despite the damaged housing. "We understand many pieces are beyond your current comprehension," the ambassador continued, his translator not quite hiding the condescending tone. "But over time, your scientists may reverse engineer basic principles. This is how young species learn." Susan stood, brushing dust from her uniform pants. She kept her face neutral, but inside her mind was racing. This wasn't a generous gift. It was an insult disguised as diplomacy, like giving a child broken toys as hand-me-downs. But as she looked more carefully, she began to see patterns, connections, possibilities. The Admiral was maintaining diplomatic pleasantries, thanking the Calgorians for their generous contribution to human scientific advancement. Military personnel were instructed to begin cataloging and moving the materials to secured facilities. Susan approached the Admiral during a brief pause in the ceremony. "Sir, request permission to assemble a specialized team for this project." "Admiral." Lawrence looked at her, one eyebrow slightly raised. "Your assessment, Commander?" She chose her words carefully, aware that the Calgorians might be listening. "I believe there's significant potential here they may not realize." The Admiral studied her face for a moment. He had known Susan since her academy days and trusted her technical instincts. "Do you need specific personnel?" "Dr. Howard Klein from MIT, Chief Engineer Frank Winters from the Artemis Project, Lieutenant Olivia Santos from Weapons Development, and I'll need Petty Officer Diane Martinez. She has an unusual talent for seeing patterns in chaos." The Admiral nodded slightly. "Granted, but keep it quiet. If they're testing us with this—" He left the sentence unfinished. "Understood, sir." Later, as the Calgorian delegation prepared to depart, Ambassador Zex Thor approached Susan. His large eyes studied her with what seemed like curiosity. "Your species shows remarkable restraint, Commander Miller. Others might have expressed disappointment at receiving such modest offerings." Susan smiled politely. "Humans have a saying, Ambassador. One person's trash is another person's treasure." "We're grateful for the opportunity to learn." The ambassador's translator hesitated on the idiom, then produced a sound that might have been amusement. "Indeed. We shall observe your progress with interest." As the alien ship lifted off, Susan stood with her team, watching it disappear into the clouds. "They gave us literal space junk," Alan said, no longer hiding his anger. "They're laughing. At us." Susan shook her head, her mind already sorting through possibilities, connections, adaptations that the Calgorians never considered. "No," she said quietly. "They made a mistake. They don't understand humans at all." She turned to her team, a small smile forming. "Let's show them what we can do with scraps." They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. 6 months passed since the Calgorians delivered their gift of space junk. Deep beneath the New Mexico desert, an old missile testing facility had been converted into the most classified workshop on Earth. The sign at the entrance simply read, "Project Phoenix." Susan Miller swiped her security card and walked through 5 checkpoints before reaching the main hangar. The space was enormous, originally designed to house intercontinental missiles during the Cold War. Now it contained something far more ambitious. "Commander on deck?" someone called out. The busy room didn't stop working, but many people nodded. Respectfully, as Susan passed, the center of the hangar held what was beginning to look like a spaceship. Not like any human vessel ever built before, and not like any alien ship either. It was something entirely new, a hybrid creation taking shape from the Calgorian scraps. Dr. Howard Klein waved Susan over to his workstation. His wild gray hair stood out in all directions, and dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much. "Commander, you need to see this." He pointed to a glowing crystal matrix they had recovered from what appeared to be an ancient navigation system. "We finally got it to interface with our computers. This thing can calculate faster than light jumps with precision that makes our best systems look like stone tools." Susan smiled. "Can we replicate it?" "Not yet. But we understand how to use it now." That's something the Calgorians didn't expect. Across the room, Petty Officer Diane Martinez was arguing loudly with Chief Engineer Frank Winters. Both stood over a large piece of metal that pulsed with faint blue light. "Everything okay?" Susan asked as she approached. Diane turned, her eyes bright with excitement despite the argument. "More than okay, Commander. This power core, it's from a different species than the Calgorians. We think it's Vexillian technology based on the markings." Frank nodded. "The problem is connecting it safely to the propulsion system. The Vexillians use a completely different energy signature than the drive components we salvaged." "So what's the solution?" Susan asked. Diane grinned. "We create an adapter, something that translates one energy type to another. The Calgorians would never try this because mixing technologies from different species is considered dangerous or even taboo in their culture. But we're humans," Frank added, "and we've been adapting incompatible technologies since the first person jammed a square peg into a round hole." Susan walked around their creation, now taking recognizable form. The ship, they called it the USS Defiance, was about 200 meters long. Its hull combined human steel with alien alloys in a unique pattern that their simulations showed would be incredibly strong yet flexible. Weapon systems recovered from at least 3 different alien civilizations had been modified and mounted on swivel points. Lieutenant Olivia Santos approached with a tablet displaying a weapons test. "Commander, we successfully fired the modified Centauri beam weapon. Using human targeting software improved its accuracy by 37%. The aliens never thought to combine their systems," Susan said, watching the test footage. "Each civilization kept their technology separate and pure." "Their loss, our gain," Olivia replied. "Admiral Lawrence visited that afternoon for his weekly inspection." Susan walked with him around the Defiance, explaining their progress and challenges. "The beauty is in how they don't understand human adaptability," Susan explained. "Each alien race builds technology compatible only with their own systems. They assumed the incompatibility would make this junk worthless to us." "But you found a way around that," Lawrence observed, watching as specialists integrated components that should never have worked together. "We're using Calgorian power systems to run Vexillian weapons, routing everything through modified human interfaces," Susan explained. "These parts were never meant to interact, but we're making them communicate in ways the original designers never imagined." The Admiral stopped walking and turned to Susan. His face was serious. "Time is becoming a factor, Commander. Our intelligence suggests the Calgorians are growing suspicious. They expected reports of our scientists struggling with basic principles. Instead, they've heard nothing." Susan nodded. "We've maintained strict information control. Nothing leaves this facility." "Good. But they're sending a diplomatic delegation next month. They're calling it a follow-up assessment of human technological integration capabilities." Susan understood the real meaning. "They want to see if we've done anything with their junk." "Exactly. How close are you to a test flight?" Susan considered carefully before answering. "The navigation system is operational. Weapons are at 80%. Life support is stable. The main challenge is the drive system, making sure the power core doesn't overload when we push it to full capacity." "Can you be ready in 3 weeks?" Susan hesitated. "It's possible, but risky." The Admiral's eyes moved to the ship, then back to Susan. "The risk of the Calgorians discovering what we've built might be greater. If they realize we've turned their scraps into something this advanced, they might see us as a threat rather than a primitive curiosity." Later that evening, Susan called her team leaders together. She explained the situation and the new deadline. 3 weeks? Frank looked shocked. "Commander, we need at least 2 months to complete proper testing." "We don't have 2 months," Susan replied. "We need to be space-worthy before the Calgorian delegation arrives." Lieutenant Commander Paul Evans, their security officer, spoke up. "Why not just hide the project? We could move the components temporarily." Susan shook her head. "Impossible. Besides, we need to know if this ship actually works. Theory is one thing, but the real test is in space." The team dispersed, each with new urgency in their steps. Susan stayed behind, looking up at the Defiance. What they were creating wasn't just a ship. It was proof that humanity wouldn't be dictated to or limited by the established galactic powers. For the next 3 weeks, the facility operated around the clock. Sleep was a luxury few took. Problems were solved as they appeared. Human ingenuity pushing past barriers that alien civilizations had accepted as insurmountable for centuries. On the final night before their deadline, Susan stood alone in the hangar. Tomorrow they would know if their grand experiment would fly or fail spectacularly. The Defiance gleamed under the lights, a patchwork miracle of human determination and alien technology that was never meant to work together. "We're ready, Commander," Frank said, coming to stand beside her. "All systems show green for launch." Susan nodded. "Then let's show the galaxy what humans can do with scraps." They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. The morning of the test flight arrived with tension hanging in the air. Every person in Project Phoenix felt it as they moved through final preparations. Susan stood in the command center, watching dozens of screens showing different parts of the Defiance. Each system had a dedicated team monitoring it. "Status report," she called out. Around the room, team leaders responded one by one. "Navigation systems ready," reported Officer Kevin Barnes. "Weapons systems operational," confirmed Lieutenant Olivia Santos. "Engineering standing by," Chief Frank Winters added. "Power core is stable but untested at full capacity." "Life support optimal," Dr. Howard Klein said from his station. Susan took a deep breath. "Prepare for boarding sequence. All non-essential. Personnel clear the hangar." Alarms sounded as most workers left the main hangar. Only the flight crew remained, 25 people chosen for this historic first mission. Susan walked with them toward the ship, her heart beating faster with each step. The inside of the Defiance looked nothing like traditional human spacecraft. Alien technology blended with human interfaces in ways that would confuse any conventional engineer. The bridge combined elements from at least 4 different species, all modified to work together. Susan took the captain's chair while her crew found their stations. Each seat was custom designed to accommodate the unique controls they had created. "All stations report," she ordered. One by one, her bridge crew confirmed their readiness. Susan opened a channel to the entire facility. "This is Commander Miller. Launch sequence will begin in 5 minutes. All systems on standby." In the control room, Admiral Lawrence watched with government officials who had arrived overnight. None had seen the project before today. Their faces showed shock and awe at what had been created from the alien scrap. "Impossible," one whispered. "They said it would take decades to understand alien technology." The Admiral smiled slightly. "They underestimated human determination." Inside the Defiance, Susan began the launch countdown. The massive ceiling of the hangar slowly retracted, revealing the night sky above. Stars shone down on the ship as its engines hummed to life. 3, 2, 1. "Initiate launch sequence," Susan commanded. The ship trembled. Lights flickered momentarily as the alien power core fully activated for the first time. Susan gripped her chair, hoping their calculations were correct. If the different technologies rejected each other now, the explosion would destroy the entire facility. "Power levels rising," Frank reported from engineering. 80%, 90%, stable at full power." A cheer went up from the crew. Susan allowed them this moment before refocusing. "Anti-gravity systems engaged," she ordered. The ship lifted smoothly from the hangar floor. Slowly at first, then with increasing confidence, it rose toward the open ceiling. Susan felt her stomach drop slightly. The artificial gravity systems compensated almost perfectly, but not quite. "We are airborne," she reported to the control room. Beginning ascent to orbit, the Defiance moved upward, quickly gaining speed. Through the forward windows, Susan watched as the stars grew brighter. The dark blue sky gradually turned black as they left Earth's atmosphere. "We've cleared the atmosphere," Kevin reported from navigation. All systems functioning normally. Susan couldn't help smiling now. They had done it, taken alien scraps, and built a ship that worked, but the real test was still to come. "Take us to lunar orbit," she ordered. "Standard approach pattern." The Defiance accelerated, moving faster than any human ship had traveled before. The moon grew larger in their view screen as they approached. The peaceful moment ended abruptly when alarms sounded across the bridge. "Commander," Paul Evans called from his security station. "We have incoming ships." Susan turned sharply. "Identify." "Unknown configuration. 3 vessels approaching from beyond lunar orbit. Wait. Their energy signature matches Calgorian technology." Susan felt cold suddenly. They weren't supposed to arrive for another week. "They lied," Paul said simply. Susan opened a channel to Earth. "Control, this is Defiance. We have 3 Calgorian vessels approaching. Please advise." Admiral Lawrence's voice came through clearly. "Defiance, this is unexpected. The diplomatic delegation moved up their timeline without notice. Their official ships are still in orbit around Earth. These must be additional vessels." "They suspected something," Susan said quietly. "That's why they sent ships ahead of the official delegation." The Admiral's voice was tense. "Can you avoid detection?" Paul shook his head before Susan could ask. "Too late. They've altered course directly toward us. They've seen us." Susan considered their options quickly. Running would show fear. Attacking, first, would be an act of war. Remaining in place seemed best for now. "Hold position," she ordered. "Power up defensive systems, but do not target their ships. Let's see what they want." Minutes passed as the Calgorian vessels drew closer. They were smaller than the diplomatic ship that had delivered the scrap, but clearly military in design. Their angular shapes reminded Susan of predatory fish. A communication request flashed on the main screen. Susan nodded to Paul to accept it. The face of a Calgorian officer appeared. Unlike Ambassador Zexithor, this one wore what appeared to be military insignia. His 4 eyes widened visibly when he saw Susan and her human crew. "Human vessel," the translation came through. "Identify yourself and explain your presence beyond your authorized space boundary." Susan stood, keeping her voice calm and professional. "This is Commander Susan Miller of the Earth vessel Defiance. We are conducting a routine test flight within our solar system, which is sovereign human territory. We were unaware of any space boundaries." The Calgorian's upper arms moved in what Susan recognized as agitation. "Your vessel contains technologies beyond human development capability. We have been studying the technological exchange provided by the Galactic Council," Susan replied carefully. "This is the result of our research." The Calgorian spoke to someone off-screen in his native language, too quick for the translator to catch. When he turned back, his tone had hardened. "Your vessel will power down and prepare for boarding and inspection. This is not a request." Susan felt the tension on the bridge rise. This was the moment of truth. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," she responded. "As I said, we are in sovereign human territory conducting authorized tests. We would be happy to arrange a proper diplomatic meeting when we return to Earth." "You misunderstand," the Calgorian said. "Your species has violated Council protocols by creating unauthorized hybrid technology. You will comply or face consequences." The communication ended abruptly. On their sensors, Susan saw the Calgorian ships moving to surround the Defiance. "Red alert," she ordered. "All hands to battle stations." They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. Red warning lights flashed across the bridge of the Defiance. The 3 Calgorian warships moved into attack positions around the human vessel. Susan watched them on the main screen, her mind racing through options. "They're charging weapons," Paul Evans reported from his security station. Lieutenant Olivia Santos looked up from the weapons console. "Commander, should we target their ships?" Susan shook her head. "Not yet. I don't want to start a war if we can avoid it." She opened a channel to Earth. "Control, this is Defiance. We have 3 Calgorian warships threatening to open fire. Request instructions." Admiral Lawrence's voice came through with slight static. "Defiance, this is a diplomatic crisis. The Calgorian ambassador is denying knowledge of any military vessels in our system. Try to defuse the situation, but you are authorized to defend yourselves if necessary." Susan turned to her crew. Defensive screens to maximum. Prepare evasive maneuvers but hold weapons. She reopened the channel to the Calgorian commander. Calgorian vessels, this is Commander Miller. I propose we both stand down and discuss this situation peacefully. The Calgorian commander appeared on screen again. His upper arms were held high, a posture Susan recognized as aggressive from her studies. Your primitive vessel will be confiscated for illegal technology integration, he stated flatly. Power down now or we will disable your ship and arrest your crew. Before Susan could respond, the Calgorian ships fired warning shots that passed close to the Defiance. The ship shuddered slightly as the energy weapons disturbed space around them. That was deliberate, Kevin said from navigation. They missed us by only 20 meters. Susan made her decision. Evasive pattern Delta. Show them what this ship can do. Kevin grinned as he entered commands. The Defiance responded instantly, moving with speed and agility that seemed impossible for its size. The ship twisted away from the Calgorian vessels in a tight spiral that no human or Calgorian ship could have managed. The alien vessels attempted to follow but couldn't match the Defiance's maneuverability. Susan watched as confusion spread among the Calgorian ships. They had expected to find humans in a crude prototype, not a vessel that could outperform their own. They're targeting us with tracking beams, Paul warned. Activate countermeasures, Susan ordered. Frank Winters had designed a unique system using components from what appeared to be an ancient stealth vessel. When activated, it created false sensor readings that confused the Calgorian targeting systems. The main screen, Susan could see the Calgorian ships firing at locations where the Defiance was not. She allowed herself a small smile. Open channel, she requested. When Paul nodded, she addressed the Calgorian commander again. As you can see, we would prefer to avoid conflict. I suggest we both return to Earth and address this through proper, diplomatic channels. The Calgorian's response was to order his ships to fire full weapons. Energy beams lanced through space toward the Defiance. Shields holding at 92%, Olivia reported as the ship rocked slightly from impact. Their weapons are powerful, but nothing we didn't expect. Susan nodded. Target their weapon systems only. Precision strikes, minimum power. I want to disable, not destroy. Olivia worked her console with expertise. The Defiance's weapons, a hybrid system combining technologies from 3 different alien species, fired for the first time in actual combat. Precise beams of blue-white energy struck the lead Calgorian ship exactly where its main weapons array was located. Direct hit, Olivia confirmed. Their primary weapons are offline. The Calgorian commander appeared on screen again, his eyes wide with shock. How is this possible? Your weapons should not be able to penetrate our shields. Susan didn't answer directly. I repeat my offer. Stand down and return to Earth for diplomatic talks. We have no desire to escalate this conflict. Instead of responding, the Calgorian ships changed tactics. 2 vessels moved to flank the Defiance while the damaged lead ship retreated slightly. They're trying to box us in, Kevin warned. Not today, Susan replied. Execute vertical climb, then attack pattern Omega. The Defiance shot upward relative to the Calgorian ships, then looped back down behind them in a maneuver that left the alien vessels completely out of position. Before they could adjust, Olivia fired again, disabling the weapon systems on the second ship with surgical precision. The third Calgorian ship launched what appeared to be boarding pods, small vessels designed to attach to an enemy ship and force entry. Boarding attempt, Paul warned. Not on my ship, Susan said firmly. Target those pods. The Defiance's point defense system activated. Small, precise energy pulses intercepted the boarding pods, disabling their guidance systems without destroying them. The pods drifted harmlessly away. The battle had lasted less than 10 minutes, but already 2 Calgorian warships were effectively neutralized. The third maintained its position but didn't advance. Commander, Paul called out, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Lawrence. The Admiral's face appeared on screen. Defiance, the Calgorian ambassador is demanding an explanation. They claim 3 of their patrol vessels were attacked unprovoked by an unknown Earth ship. Susan kept her voice steady. Sir, we have video evidence of their actions. They fired first and attempted to board our vessel by force. We responded, with minimum necessary force to protect ourselves. I believe you, Commander. But this has become a major diplomatic incident. I need you to return to Earth immediately. Susan looked at the Calgorian ships on her screen. What about them, sir? A diplomatic vessel is being dispatched to escort them back. Your priority is to return with the Defiance intact. We need to show the Council exactly what happened here. Susan nodded. Understood, sir. Returning to Earth. As the Defiance turned back toward Earth, Susan took a moment to reflect on what had just happened. Their first encounter with alien military forces had resulted in a clear victory. The ship built from scrap had outperformed purpose-built warships from an advanced civilization. They never expected this, Frank said, joining Susan on the bridge. They gave us junk thinking we might build something crude at best. They never imagined we'd create something better than their own ships. Susan nodded. That's why they reacted with force. They're afraid of what we might become. The journey back to Earth was tense but uneventful. The remaining Calgorian ship kept its distance, simply following as the diplomatic vessel arrived to escort it. As they approached Earth, Susan could see unusual activity in orbit. More Calgorian ships had arrived, these larger and clearly diplomatic rather than military. The situation had escalated to a full diplomatic crisis. All hands prepare for landing, Susan announced, and be ready for anything. I suspect our real battle is just beginning, and it will be fought with words rather than weapons. The Defiance descended through Earth's atmosphere, heading back to the facility where it had been built. Susan knew that soon she would need to explain their actions to not just Earth authorities, but representatives of the Galactic Council itself. She was ready. The Defiance had proven what humans could do with scraps. Now it was time to show the galaxy what humans could do with words and truth. They gave us scrap. We turned it into the deadliest warship in the galaxy. 1 week after the incident in space, Susan Miller stood in the largest conference room at the United Nations building in New York. The room had been specially modified for this historic meeting. Representatives from 24 spacefaring civilizations sat in a semicircle, their various body shapes accommodated by custom seating. Humans filled one side of the room, aliens the other. Admiral Lawrence stood beside Susan, along with the president and other high-ranking officials. On the table before them sat data drives containing complete records of the Defiance's creation and the space battle. Ambassador Zex Thor spoke first, his forearms moving in what Susan now recognized as extreme agitation. Humans have violated the most sacred principles of galactic technology development. They have created dangerous hybrid systems by combining technologies from multiple civilizations. This reckless behavior threatens the stability of the entire council. The president responded calmly. We were given materials with no restrictions on their use. We studied them and learned, as any species would. If there were rules about technology, integration, they were never shared with us. A tall, thin alien with pale blue skin leaned forward. According to Susan's briefing, this was the representative of the Phalanx, one of the oldest council races. The rules were not shared because no other young species has ever attempted such integration. It is simply not done. Susan stepped forward when the president nodded to her. With respect, we didn't know that. Humans have always adapted and combined technologies. It's fundamental to how we innovate. When we received components from various civilizations, our natural approach was to find ways to make them work together. The Calgorian military commander who had confronted the Defiance in space stood suddenly. This human vessel disabled 2 of our warships. Their weapons should not have been capable of penetrating our shields. They have created a dangerous weapon that threatens galactic peace. Susan activated a holographic display showing the battle. We only fired after your ships attacked us without provocation. We used minimum force and deliberately avoided causing any deaths. The recording clearly showed the Calgorian ships firing first, and the Defiance's precise response. Ambassador Zex Thor's voice rose. The patrol ships were attempting to prevent dangerous technology from being tested. They acted to protect the galactic community. Admiral Lawrence stepped forward. From our perspective, 3 warships surrounded a test vessel in our own solar system and demanded its surrender. If roles were reversed, how would any of you have responded? The room fell, quiet for a moment. Then a small reptilian alien spoke. The human argument has merit. The initial gift was provided without clear limitations. The patrol ships did enter human territory without diplomatic clearance. The Phalanx representative nodded slowly. However, the issue of technology integration remains concerning. Mixing different civilizations' technologies has historically led to dangerous instabilities and accidents. That is why the practice is avoided. Susan saw her opening. Yet our ship showed no such instabilities. In fact, it performed better than expected. She activated another display showing the Defiance's technical specifications. We found that certain technologies actually work more efficiently when combined properly. The alien representatives murmured among themselves. Susan could tell many were shocked by the data they were seeing. Impossible, one whispered loudly enough to be heard. The efficiency ratings cannot be accurate, another added. A tall, crystalline being that Susan didn't recognize spoke in a musical voice. I propose we examine the human vessel ourselves. If their claims are true, perhaps there is something to learn here. This suggestion caused more discussion among the council members. Finally, the Phalanx representative raised a hand for silence. We will require a complete inspection of this vessel by council engineers. If the human claims prove accurate, we may need to reconsider certain assumptions about technological development. The next 3 days were intense. Alien engineers from a dozen different civilizations examined every system on the Defiance. Susan and her team answered thousands of questions, explaining their design choices and integration methods. On the 4th day, the council reconvened. The mood had shifted noticeably. The Phalanx representative spoke first. Our examination confirms the human claims. Their integration methods are unorthodox but effective. More significantly, they have achieved efficiency improvements that our separated approach to technology has never produced. The crystalline being added, the human approach is different from anything we have seen. Where we see boundaries between technologies, they see opportunities for connection. Ambassador Zexathor had been uncharacteristically quiet. Now he stood. The Calgorian collective acknowledges that the initial gift was not provided in good faith. It was meant as a test, one we expected would demonstrate human technological limitations. Susan wasn't surprised by this admission. She had suspected as much from the beginning. The ambassador continued. Instead, it revealed our own limitations of thinking. We have operated under assumptions that may no longer serve the galactic community. The president stepped forward. What does this mean? For Earth's position in the Galactic Council? The Phalanx representative stood. Humanity will be granted full council membership effective immediately. Additionally, we propose a new galactic technology integration initiative, with Commander Miller as its first director. Susan felt her heart race. This was more than she had hoped for. The Phalanx continued. Earth will host this initiative. Scientists from all council races will work together to explore the potential of technological integration, with appropriate safety measures. Of course. In the months that followed, the Defiance became the template for a new class of ships, not just for war, but for exploration and scientific discovery. Susan, now Admiral Miller, supervised the construction of 5 more vessels using the same integration principles. 1 year after the confrontation in space, Susan stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital station. Below her, teams of humans and aliens worked together on projects that would have been unimaginable before. Captain Alan Wright joined her at the window. Did you ever think a pile of space junk would lead to this? Susan smiled, watching as a Calgorian engineer demonstrated something to a group of human students. They wanted to test us, they just didn't expect us to pass so dramatically. What do you think is next for us? Alan asked, looking out at the stars. That's the beauty of it, Susan replied. For the first time, nobody knows. Not us, not them. We're all discovering new possibilities together. Below them, Earth shone blue and green, home to a species that had turned scrap into innovation, suspicion into cooperation, and an insult into an opportunity that was changing the galaxy. They gave us scrap, Susan said quietly. We gave them a future none of us could have imagined alone.